So we will stay into the topic of infrastructure, but this time we will concentrate on the topic developing a hydrogen-based refueling infrastructure for road and rail. How does the integration of into the European backbone succeed? And I have, I think, a very, very good panel here with me representing road and rail, and they will just introduce themselves to you. Would you like to start?
Thank you, Solveig. Yeah, my name is Volker Hasenberg. I'm Deputy Head of International Hydrogen Strategy at Daimler Trucks. So I'm pretty sure you know my company, Daimler Trucks, but I want just to highlight how we see a future absolutely carbon neutral and having products not relying on any combustion engine, or at least not relying on any emissions based on CO2. So we have a strategy which belongs on two technologies. The one technology, and that's pretty obvious, and most of our competitors are doing the same, is battery electric. And we see battery electric, even for heavy-duty trucks, as a really reliable option. And it will also be a reliable option for long-haul trucking. But, and this is why we may have a bit another position as our competitors, we believe that it is very unlikely that we only can rely on battery electric trucks when we want to substitute all trucks we bring today on the market. So just think about no diesel engine anymore, no diesel trucks, only having zero-emission trucks on the road, selling only zero-emission trucks, then only battery electric. For us, and there are good arguments, and perhaps we come later on to this, this is not feasible. And so the second option comes into play, and the second option is hydrogen-based trucks, and that's the reason why I'm sitting here on the panel, and perhaps also your interest in hydrogen and how we use hydrogen. And we believe with these two options, we can achieve a carbon-neutral transportation for road freight transport. And I'm very happy to discuss this further now in the next 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Very happy to have you. Yeah, let's continue with you.
Sure. My name is Elena Hof. I am with Jet H2 Energy. We are a joint venture founded in July of last year with the goal of building hydrogen refueling stations in Germany, Denmark, and Europe. We are focusing on public hydrogen refueling stations for all road applications, specifically heavy-duty transport, which is why it's good that we're sitting next to each other here, connected in a big manner. I'm very interested, of course, in the European hydrogen backbone. It's very relevant to us in order to supply our hydrogen refueling stations. What people need to understand, however, is that it's not as simple as just connecting a station to a pipeline grid. It's a bit more complex than that. We have an entire supply chain from hydrogen production to the customer. And we always think about the bigger elements such as hydrogen production, pipeline, refueling station, and then vehicle. But there are actually quite a few elements in between that we need to think about as well in order to make sure that the supply chain is actually reliable, because in the end, that is what's most important to the customer at the moment, to make sure that everything is reliable and that they get some sort of flexibility. We also need to talk about the fact that especially on politics, we discussed a lot about having a needs-based development of the infrastructure. I don't think, however, that we have a common understanding about what that actually means, because it doesn't necessarily mean that we develop everything in parallel and just look at what are the vehicle producers doing, okay, then we build some stations. If we would be doing that, then we would be doing a lot of sitting, waiting, wishing, basically. We kind of need to move a bit faster and in order to get going. So I think we need some clarity on what do we need to develop at what stage and how our things are connected in order to actually get going.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much. And Jochen comes from the other form, like from the train part, right, Jochen?
Yeah, my name is Jochen Steinbauer. I'm from Siemens Mobility. Siemens Mobility should be well known as a train manufacturer, a mobility provider. Our most prominent product is the ICE train, of course. But we do not only care about high-speed trains, but also about regional trains. And In 2017, we made up our mind because we cancelled or have thrown away the diesel trains out of our portfolio since almost a decade. So we made up our mind what is the right technology to even replace diesel trains. Is it battery or is it hydrogen? And we decided to go for both, similar as Daimler. And now I'm responsible for the hydrogen trains, meaning the technology, market introduction, and business development. And we are already on an interesting journey to develop this train. And we are also facing challenges, also technical challenges, but also challenges even from the market. And even our clients ask us a lot of questions. We as Siemens Mobility, as a train provider, cannot answer without the help of our partners. And one prominent question at the moment is, how does the filling work? Is it safe? Is it certified? We are a little bit concerned. And the second question is, who can provide us at least the hydrogen price and guarantee it for at least 3 years? So that we can make up our calculation and decide what is the right technology for even which application. And though I'm happy to discuss this even further in the circle here.
Super, yeah, thank you very much. And then we have Caroline.
Yes, hi, Caroline Stancell. I work for Air Products. We are a global industrial gas company. I'm the general manager for hydrogen for mobility and energy transition. As a company, we are currently the world's largest hydrogen producer. We produce more than 8,000 tons a day of hydrogen. At the moment, almost all of that hydrogen is gray. But that's changing very quickly. We have $15 billion of approved, committed investments to produce both blue and green hydrogen in large quantities, with the production coming on stream as early as 2026. So I'm very optimistic about the transport sector, and I'm here to reassure that by the time 2026 comes along, molecules will be available in quantity, and we also are working on the right systems to ensure that we can provide robust, reliable fueling station supply chains without the use of the full backbone, because I don't think that will be ready as the first trucks come to market and as the first trains come to market.
Super, thank you.
Caroline,
yeah,
if
sure.
I just jump in here, so it's perfect when I hear you come 2026, so 2027, we come with our products.
It's a perfect match.
fits perfectly, yeah. So it sounds so easy, but of course we all agree there are still some challenges, some things that we have to overcome. And at first I would like to ask the audience in a poll, which factor do you believe is the most critical for successfully integrating hydrogen refilling infrastructure into the European backbone? So maybe we have some options to answer. And we are curious about your opinion on that. So we see the government policies and the regulatory support is extremely needed. Yeah, that's also a topic that we had in other panel discussions today. Then the standardization, interoperability across countries and regions is also seen as a big challenge and something that we have to clarify. Giving this question also back to you. Where do you see at the moment the main challenges, but maybe also the opportunities in the subject coming from your point of view, representing different aspects of the value chain in different industries? Where do you see the most important challenges and also maybe opportunities? Yes?
May I start?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I think there is no conference where we are talking about this chicken and egg issue. Mm-hmm. And to me, I would like to phrase it more like to overcome this. Mm-hmm. And as we already see, so we have a way to go and we have not really time left. Mm-hmm. So we are talking only about a few years. So as I said, end of this decade, we want to come with serious production of our hydrogen trucks. We need serious production. We need thousands of trucks on the road because of regulation. Mm-hmm. So this is not just announcing, we are really heading for this. But in parallel, we need the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So we need a sufficient infrastructure net of hydrogen stations. we need the hydrogen itself, and we need the hydrogen at, let me say, at an affordable price. So the tricky thing is, we may be forced to bring those trucks on the market because of regulation, but our customers still have the choice. As long as their customers do not deny that they can transport the goods with a diesel truck, they have still the choice. And then it's a simple question. They have to earn money with a truck, and if the price for hydrogen is too high, then the entire business case doesn't work. And so we need those two figures that this comes into play, and this will be a success story. We need, even in the early years, hydrogen at an affordable price, and there comes the governments into play. I think without such a mechanism like H2 Global, that doesn't work. And then we need at least a sufficient network of hydrogen stations.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the business case is very important. Yeah. Right. To really plan something, to have a reliable business case, reliable figures. Yeah. Any one of you has an estimation about that? So when we get some like reliable figures on that, is anyone able to say, okay, will it be in 1 year? Will it be this year already? Caroline, you're...
So, I mean, it's been said many times earlier today, but if you think about the cost of green hydrogen, right? If it's the cost of green hydrogen, then the major factor of that is the cost of electricity. Now, none of us can say what the cost of electricity is going to be in a year's time either. And so without being able to say what the cost of electricity is in a year's time, you can't say what the cost of green hydrogen is. And if you take blue hydrogen, because there has also been a lot of talk about blue hydrogen today, which I think is another very interesting option, it's going to be cheaper than green hydrogen. That part I'm pretty sure, but again, it comes from natural gas, and it will be more expensive than natural gas, and the major component of it will be the natural gas cost. So then we come to the same question of what will natural gas costs be? And none of us can predict that either. And so the prediction of the cost is not so easy. Nobody can say, oh, it will be this amount in this point in time, because it really depends on those underlying utility costs.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think that this is specifically something that we need to overcome. I don't know if this is a German mentality or European mentality, but we do have the tendency to want to have the perfect solution and to have everything basically put up in front of us. So we want to have all the answers until we start to move, which is the reason why we're now running out of time and everybody is starting to panic, because you don't have the perfect solution. You're not going to have security on electricity prices, hydrogen prices, and so on. You just need to get going at some point. And I think that is also the reason why the regulatory framework might be a bit too restrictive at the moment in many areas, because there's this panic of things moving into the wrong direction. But I think for now the priority is to actually get things moving in some direction. Like you said.
I think another thing that we all have to recognize is we are in this situation. We're in the climate crisis today because fossil fuels don't actually bear their true cost. Okay, we have to recognize that. And so if we then say that we're going to have a future where the fuel is going to be CO2 free, the cost of the fuel, including the vehicles and everything else, which are also more expensive, is going to be the cost today plus the cost of the CO2 damages. And if we think about the fires, the floods, the climate changes that we have, those are costs that we don't see in our electricity costs today or in our natural gas costs today, and yet they are a cost that we're paying from fossil fuels. And I mean, who knows what happens in 2040? I don't want to try to predict the future that far. But honestly, if there was an economic incentive to make this change, none of us would be here talking about it because it would have happened. The electrolyzer is not a new invention. It's existed for 40 years. This transition hasn't taken place because there is an economic hurdle to it, essentially because fossil fuels are effectively too cheap for the impact that they have on the environment.
Yeah.
Fully agree with you all, but at the end of the day, the hydrogen price should underlie natural market regulation. So our task and our job of even all of us is to increase the demand and increase the generation of hydrogen, and then the price should go down. And that's exactly the reason why the trains should help, because the trains consume a huge amount of hydrogen. Just to give you an example, a fleet of 20 trains requires an amount of hydrogen of roughly about 5 tons per day.
Wow.
So, and this is absolutely predictable, because we know very well exactly where the train goes, and most times it is in time, the train. But so we can even predict the consumption, and then the industry can predict the generation, and then the price should go down.
Yes.
And this is what we have to start and initialize.
Yeah. By the way, Jochen, where does Siemens receive all the hydrogen from? Is it from inland or is it outside?
We are a train manufacturer, so we want to sell the trains. But indeed, this is an interesting question, which our clients ask us: where can we get the hydrogen from? And we are relying on partners like Air Products, Linde, and all the others, and need to find partnerships for that consortia. But it is the case in the market that our clients do not only require the trains, but the complete ecosystem. And this is a new trend in the market. And they want us, and even the consortium leader and the partners, to also manage the interface between train and infrastructure and the complete supply chain. And that's a challenge.
Absolutely. When we talk about the refueling infrastructure, it's also important to know about the form of hydrogen. So we have gas and liquid, And Volker, at Daimler trucks, you primarily rely on liquid hydrogen. I've heard about it. So why do you do that? And how can it be integrated then in the European network?
Yeah, I had already today debates and discussion about exactly this question. So why not the hell, but in brackets, why the hell you are inventing or just focusing on a third way? So we have the 350 bar, we have 700 bar, and now Daimler Truck comes along with liquid hydrogen. And yes, it might be looks like that there is no need for it, and then there's no advantage. As you can mention, we see it differently. And the point is very simple. So currently we are starting with 350 bar, and this is state-of-the-art technology, and that's the right way to go. And you have also lower cost to get things going. The next step might be 700 bar, simply the fact that when you rely, in terms of trucks, only on 350 bars, you do not have the clear advantage of a longer range. So when you have 350 bars, then you end up roughly in the same range like a long-haul battery truck. And for us, this is not the right way, because we see battery trucks in regional delivery and also in point-to-point long-haul segment. But when it comes to the real longer distances to drive, then we see hydrogen. And therefore, we need more energy on board. And when you take liquid hydrogen, you can put by far more energy on board, meaning you can drive longer. Our prototypes can drive more than 1,000 kilometers with one fill. And you have not only this flexibility, you have also advantages on cost side, as well on the truck side, but also on the HRS side. And when you think about, not there are only a few trucks running, but perhaps in 10 years we have 10,000 of trucks running in Germany and in Europe even more, then you need refilling stations which can cope with 50, 80 plus trucks per day. And therefore we believe a liquid hydrogen station is much more cost competitive and more convenient than a gaseous one.
Okay, yeah.
While we're on the topic of liquid, let me build a bit on what Volker is saying. So in addition to producing hydrogen, we also operate trucks. And of course, because we produce hydrogen, we don't have the chicken and egg problem. We can produce the fuel for our own trucks and fuel them. We just need trucks.
Yeah.
And as we've looked at
You need the chickens.
as we've looked
You
at
have the eggs.
350 bar truck, it really doesn't have the range that you need as somebody running a logistics platform. And the liquid truck is beautiful in terms of the range that it provides you. And quite frankly, as a fueling station provider and operator, I don't see the problem of mixed modal hydrogen supply, particularly when you start to talk about stations of the size that Volker is talking about. You end up needing to have quite a bit of hydrogen storage on site in order to ensure the reliability of the system. That storage is likely to be liquid from a space and efficiency perspective, and from there you can easily provide liquid fueling, 350 bar fueling, and 700 bar fueling, because you have everything there that you need to do it. So I don't see any driver to try to push towards a single mode of hydrogen supply at this stage of the market development. It's quite easy to accommodate the three.
All right.
The issue that we see when it comes to liquid hydrogen, for instance, is, I mean, we're not closed off to the topic at all, but if you can produce it yourself, obviously it's a nice story, but if you can't, then you kind of have to see where you get it from.
Yep,
and
right.
I think at the moment you have like 3 or 4 liquefaction facilities in Germany, and of course we're talking about importing hydrogen as well, but then the question is, who actually has that priority to import liquid hydrogen, and where will it be, and where can we get it? Because if you want to operate like more than 100 or 200 stations in several countries, you need to have a clear idea of where you can actually secure your supply with liquid hydrogen. That is the issue that we see at the moment. We're also very interested in seeing how the customer actually adapts to the different technologies. We see high advantages, for instance, in the 350 bar gaseous technology, simply because the costs are very low. So the price delta between 350 bar and 700 bar, for instance, will be quite significant to the customer. So I can actually imagine customers driving a 700 bar vehicle refueling with 350 bar just because it's much cheaper. Okay. So that is the question, where will they actually move? Is the range aspect really the important one? Is it more the cost? Is it more the refueling time? I think actually that is the biggest advantage that we have for hydrogen when it comes to differentiating with battery electric mobility. I think the refueling time is the most important aspect. The range might not even be that important in my personal opinion. The vehicles that we have on the road or available in the market at the moment have ranges of up to like 400 kilometers. So the customers now make their first experience with those vehicles. And I think at the time when we're looking at bigger ranges, people might have adapted a bit more to a new technology and might actually be willing to refuel like one time more on that track in order to ensure cost efficiency, even though that is something that they're not used to at the moment, because they're used to ranges of maybe like 2,000 or 3,000 kilometers. But people will adopt at some kind, and it will be interesting to see what new priorities will actually be set by the customers.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's one problem with the liquefied hydrogen. I mean, we also thought about liquid hydrogen in a train application, but whenever you want to get the power out of the liquid hydrogen, you have to transfer it again into a gaseous state. So, and this requires space, temperature, and energy. And in a train, there are more than 200 people, and we have space constraints on the roof, and even managing a temperature of 400 degrees Celsius and more is not easy in order to receive a homologation certificate for this passenger train. So we have to distinguish it case by case and decide what is the right application. I fully agree that for trucks it might be a solution. I'm still hoping that in maybe 10 years there is a direct liquid fuel cell available and we can get out the power directly. So that would be my
That would be efficient.
Yeah.
Jochen, by the way, it was just my next question to you. I mean, it must be very challenging to get all the hydrogen into a train. Yeah. So what are these challenges there? So how would you overcome them? And how you get it all in a certain time in the train?
Yeah, I mean, this is indeed a challenge. I mean, the train is running with 350 bar rated power, and for filling it up, we need 500 bar. And the filling of a gaseous is completely different to filling a diesel train and a liquid. So you have to consider the temperature, you have to consider hotspots in the storage system on the roof of the train, and of course the pressure and the temperature. And these all physical values need to be handled and managed. And that's the reason why the train manufacturer, even application and provider, needs to provide a protocol and a kind of regime how to fill up this dedicated application or train from a filling station provider and operator. And this needs to be standardized.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why a lot of our clients are concerned, because the standardization is ongoing, but it takes simply too long.
Yeah, time pressure is a thing that that we all agree is there. Yeah, I just want to include some questions of the audience, and there is a question: what about ammonia as a medium to store and transport? What is the real potential in it? Any one of you can answer this question?
I can have a first pass at answering it. So when we talk about wanting to transport hydrogen over long distances, or transport basically renewable energy over long distances, because that's what all of this is about. We're trying to put the renewable energy in a different form. Right now, ammonia is the most feasible way to do that. So there are people working on the transport of liquid hydrogen in large quantities. We ourselves do transport liquid hydrogen across long distances. For example, we ship it from the US to certain electronics customers in various parts of the world. We ship it from Europe to other parts of the world, again, mostly for the electronics industry, but you're doing it in very small quantities. Let's say a single container of hydrogen that you're going to ship over long distances would contain maybe 2 tons. So you're not going to run very many trucks or trains on that. So when we start talking about wanting to move renewable energy in mass form, the easiest way to do it today is in the form of ammonia. Because ammonia actually has a higher energy density than liquid hydrogen. So you can produce it from your renewable energy, store it in the form of ammonia, and then move it. Now, of course, once we've gone through the trouble of producing ammonia from the renewable energy, it would be nice to use it directly in a fuel cell as ammonia. But that seems to be some time away. I mean, it is in its developmental phase, and we'll see how it goes. But for today, that's a very realistic way to move renewables from one part of the world to another, but then when you get it to where you want to use it, you either need to use it in a chemical process as ammonia, and that's very feasible, or you need to convert it, you need to produce hydrogen from that ammonia so that you can then have gaseous hydrogen. And then we liquefy once we produce the gaseous hydrogen just for transport efficiency and storage efficiency. Because while you're talking about moving gaseous hydrogen in a truck, at 350 bar, you don't get very much in it. And so the efficiency of trying to transport hydrogen in that way is very low. Yeah. Now, of course, if there's a hydrogen backbone available at some point, then things change. Yeah. But for now, liquid is a very efficient way to move hydrogen by road, and ammonia is a very efficient way to move renewable energy by sea.
I think we have to be fair. So this is an existing technology, and therefore, if we want to start to import hydrogen from other regions, and we heard several times today that Europe and especially Germany will still rely on imports. So currently we have roughly 70% of our energy imported, and you can go in all studies from left to right. It will be in a range still of between 30 and 45% of energy we use in future. And so in the end, it's about how hydrogen comes to Europe, comes to Germany. And when we start now in this decade, taking ammonia, having an existing infrastructure is not too bad. But looking in longer terms, so the idea is clear, we have to make the entire chain more sufficient and therefore liquefy the hydrogen, and having 1 or 2 steps less in the entire chain is much better.
There was another question in this direction. So is methanol an alternative for the transport sector? So is that maybe something that we should think about?
Not for trucks.
Okay.
We're focusing on hydrogen only, so not for us either.
Okay.
the same for us. I mean, we are at the beginning of a very interesting roadmap and development in the next decades for hydrogen. We are there where the combustion engine was in the 19th century already. So we have a long roadmap before us. And I'm pretty sure that development will be advanced, and even methanol could be an option in the future. At the moment, it's not.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming back to our regional topic, the infrastructure challenges. When we talk about road and rail, the question is where to put all the filling stations. Yeah, Elena, you mentioned in your introductory statement this needs-based infrastructure. Can you explain what does it mean when we come to the synergies, maybe?
I actually think that we have very different requirements because we are focusing on hydrogen refueling stations for road transport, and especially on European level, the entire focus is at the moment on building hydrogen refueling stations along the TEN-T, so the Trans-European net, which is very relevant in order to ensure cross-border transportation on a long term. For rail transport, I think the story is very different because you're obviously not really looking at substituting like long distance train, you're looking at regional trains, so you don't really need that dense like grid of refueling stations. So the requirements are a bit different, I would say. Even though I would say that this focus that we have on European level on the TEN-T is not necessarily the biggest priority at the moment. I would like to see a more regional approach in order to make sure that we actually focus on regions that have a high potential, where you can actually use synergies when it comes to the entire supply chain. And there we might actually have some synergies. You might be able to think about transporting or supplying hydrogen together to use some synergies. For us, obviously, it would be interesting to transport hydrogen via rail as well. It's an interesting alternative to pipelines as well, who might not be available tomorrow. So I think this is an option that could be relevant and could be made available much sooner. So this would be interesting for us as well. But we do have different requirements, I would say.
Yeah, Jochen, is it interesting for you what Elena suggested?
Yeah, in principle, yes. When we look to the train and the market for trains, what we need is a local hydrogen, let's call it hubs, or more sophisticated wording is ecosystems, where the hydrogen is produced locally and consumed locally. And that's the reason why we, as Siemens Mobility, we went into this joint venture in partnership with Deutsche Bahn and Deutsche Bahn Energy. They're doing exactly this. They're just producing local hydrogen from the power running already from the green power running already through the overt catenary systems at main stations in the huge cities, produce local hydrogen and distribute it to not even trains, but also trucks and other applications. And this is what we need to get this economy started. Yeah.
We need to make sure that we're not going crazy with synergies. Using synergies, of course, is a nice thing, but then there's always this idea of having a refueling station that refuels trains and trucks and everything else. Yeah. That doesn't really make sense. It also doesn't make sense to build a refueling station at one spot just because there's a pipeline. We do have different requirements. We choose our locations due to the frequency of light and heavy duty vehicles. You choose your stations at the spot where you need to refuel your trains. That is not necessarily the spot where we would put a station. So it's always nice to use synergies, but you can't go crazy about it. You still have to keep in mind like what actually works.
Absolutely, yeah. There is a question which fits also from our audience. The information is limited regarding the number of filling stations needed. So what would you think about how many filling stations will be there in maybe 2030 or 2040 is the question. Anyone of you can estimate this?
Sure, I can. I can give you a direct number. As always, it depends.
Yes.
And
it's always a good answer.
It depends for sure of the size of the filling station. So what is the daily capacity of the size of the fleet? So how many trucks or cars has to be served with those infrastructure? I think the focus is mainly on trucks, not on cars. Not that I'm not believing that there will be also an increasing fleet of hydrogen cars, but just put in perspective the need and the consumption of hydrogen on average per year. And you mentioned, Jochen, what a train is consuming per day. So 5 tons or 20 trains, 5 tons. So for a truck, it is a bit less. It's 10 tons per year per truck. But for a car, it's 0.2 tons. Okay. So 50 times less. So when we think about demand and uptake of hydrogen via the infrastructure, via HRS, this depends mainly on the size of the trucks. And at least can you give a rough number what we believe how many trucks will be on road in 2030 and put it on a European level, we believe it will be 60 to 70,000, roughly half of it in Germany at that point, and therefore, at least again, depending on the size of the HRS, but therefore you need 600 to 700 stations European-wide.
Yeah, I would actually like to pick up on that topic on the side of the HRS, because what we see at the moment on European level, there's this whole idea on focusing on the 10T, basically saying we need a station like of at least like 1 ton capacity or even 2 ton capacity per day every 200 kilometers. That is a nice idea for the long term, but it's just not really sufficient for what we need right now. We see that it's actually of higher value to have a regional, dense grid of many stations that might be a bit smaller, but you only have distances of maybe like 30 to 50 kilometers, because that makes much more sense to the customer than having a wide range of bigger stations. So I think this is an important question, like what is really the priority at the moment? Because having this idea of like really big stations at the moment doesn't really make sense, because you won't have that vehicle. Like if we're building a like 2 or 3 ton station at the moment, then it's nice to have it, but you won't need it until, let's say maybe in 5 years or so. Yep. And I think it's much more relevant to have many stations, even though those might be smaller, than having a few big ones.
Yes.
For trains, it's easy. The answer is 150, roughly about.
Okay.
for Germany,
to estimate. Yeah.
For Germany, there are still 3,000 diesel trains running. Typical fleet size is 20. And so we would need 100 to 200 filling stations for trains capable of filling 5 tons per day. So
okay. Yeah, that's a clear answer. Yeah.
I'd like to pick up the flip side of the station size, because again, looking at it as a company who does do logistics as well, we see sort of 2 demands for our own vehicles, which may not be true for the whole market, but for our own vehicles, we have 2 types of demand. We have vehicles that do back to base, and we need to be able to do, say, 350, 400 kilometers, always coming back to base. But for that's very easy. You need 1 fueling station. You need it at base. You fuel it there. And then we have vehicles that go long haul, and there, having a local dense network doesn't do me any good whatsoever. I need to be able to take my truck on the road to where it needs to go, refuel, and come back. And so I do support the larger station set at distances that allow people to run efficient distributions over longer distances in terms of getting a network. Now, maybe it doesn't need to span all of Europe. I can certainly see that trucks are going to be in some places first. So let's be smart. Let's put the stations where the trucks are to begin with. But also in terms of a capital efficiency argument, to invest in many small stations that then become more or less obsolete as vehicle numbers expand, I think is maybe not the best use of resources.
But I think even in Germany it makes sense to look at what locations you actually have what frequency of vehicles, because there are areas even in Germany where you have a lesser frequentation than in others. So the demand will be different. So it doesn't make sense to just look at the distances in between the stations. You need to look at, there might be like places where you actually need bigger stations very early. So I do get what you're saying, but it's a bit more complex than just putting a station every 200 kilometers or so.
Yeah, also where the most of the vehicles drive through, right? It's where are the ways where the people are going and where the trucks are going, yeah. But we're coming to the end now because time is unfortunately very limited. But maybe as an outlook for the future, maybe all of you, very short statement. What do you think is necessary as a next step? Because you said, okay, time is a pressure, that we have pressure in time. We want to go for the next step. So what would be your wishes or your expectations for the next step to come into this infrastructure and have a functional infrastructure?
Very easy, very short. The trucks are coming. We need affordable hydrogen.
For me, I think we need a more comprehensive political view on things. What we see at the moment is that we have European regulation, and then we have German regulation, for instance, but that's not necessarily in line with what's happening on federal level. For us, for instance, it's a big issue to actually find locations that are big enough and suited for building refueling stations, and that is actually an issue that is not only applicable to hydrogen stations, it's also applicable to charging infrastructure. So if you don't have those federal bodies actually making sure that there's land provided to build the infrastructure, then all those regulative things and goals on European and on European level don't really get anywhere because you can't really make sure it actually works.
Okay.
What we need is a regulation of the process of filling the trains or the interface between the train and the filling station. And of course, affordable hydrogen prices. That's clear.
That's something that we all want. Yeah.
So Volker says the trucks are coming. I can assure you the hydrogen is coming. So what we need is the demand. So we need people to buy the trucks and the hydrogen. And so what I would really like to see is strong government programs to help potential users to bridge the cost gap in both the vehicles and the fuel, because as things start, there will be a cost gap in both of those items. And so help and assistance to allow people to bridge that gap and allow the demand to develop is, for me, the most important.
Super. Thank you very much for sharing your expert knowledge with us. And yeah, we have talked about the infrastructure and the refilling structure. We know there might be some synergies for road and rail, and we can look for them, but we should not overdo that. And there's time pressure. Everybody wants to go to the next steps. And yeah, we really appreciate for being with us today. And thank you very much again.